Hello, and welcome to definitely not the third take of this video. I'm Root Beer. I'm still in Atlas's apartment because Springfest. So, when I was getting all my stuff for Nova Grappler, I realized that I had forgotten to order the starter. Again. This is like the third time I've done something like this. But, and so, as you do, I had to order a bunch of cards that were more expensive so I could get tracking because I desperately needed the starter within like a week. And I noticed that Minerva has gone down a decent amount since the first release. So on release it was about 16-ish dollars and now it's closer to 10 or 11, which, not too bad for a deck that's like tier 2 ish, I'd say. Like if Jet, Youthberg, and Eva are currently tier 1, I think this is like just underneath those. That's not horrible. And I thought, like, could we build Minerva on like a moderate budget? Because I picked up all of the core cards for around $70. The answer ended up being no, because couple reasons. One is this guy being a $40 card now, but also I didn't realize like how expensive the triggers had become, or like Sanctitude. But yeah. So instead what I thought I'd do is that we could have like tiered deck builds. So we kind of have the like high budget version, which is pretty close to what I think has been topping. I just kind of like perused all of the topping lists from the current BCS season and or the current Springfest season with teams, and then also like a quick look at Japanese lists, and this seems like a decent approximation of that. And then we're gonna have two more versions, a more like mid-priced build, and then just like full-on copium budget deck. So let's go over the like full fat Minerva list that seems pretty close to what has been topping. So of course, we're going to have 4 copies of Minerva, our boss card, so she can give the front row 5k when you have a grade 3 Regalia in Soul. You can Soul Blast 1, look at the top card, put it on top or in your Soul, and at the end of the battle it attacked. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 3, and discard a card with only Genesis for a clan, stand it, and it gets Drive -1. So it is your typical restander that also gives your front row power. Next we have Chamomile, the grade 2 of the ride line, so when rode by a Genesis, you look at your top 5, choose up to 2, put them in your Soul, shuffle, and then when this card is put from Soul to Drop Zone during your turn, if you have a Vanguard with Minerva, you can Counterblast 1, call it to rear. And then Melissa has the same skill as Chamomile for the first one, where ridden by a Genesis, check top 5, grab up to 2, put them in Soul, and when it's put into Drop from Soul, if you have Minerva Vanguard, you can call it to a back row, and if you called, you may Soul Charge 1. I may or may not have kept forgetting to do that when I was playing against Atlas. And of course your starter. Then we have 4 copies of Angelica, so at the end of the battle it attacked, if you have a Vanguard with Minerva, Soul Blast 1, give your Vanguard 5k, and then you can put it into Soul and countercharge. So this is a nice thing where it replaces the Soul that you blast out. You can blast out Chamomile to get an extra attack. You can then countercharge, so if you counterblasted in the main phase for something, or you had like counterblasted a previous turn, it gets you that back. All around, just a really good card. Also, being a grade 3 in Soul means you can turn on Minerva's plus 5k to the front row. And then it just gives Minerva a bit of extra power, which is nice. And then Knight of Rendering Flash Carbra, which is the destroyer of budgets. I completely forgot to buy this card when it was like $8. Now it's $40. Yay. So, on play, you can Counterblast Soul Blast, look at top 3, choose a card, reveal it. If it's grade 2 or less unit, call it to rear, and if it's anything else, put it into your hand. So, this just digs through your deck, it can build a board, and even if you hit like Minerva or Angelica, if it's Angelica, you can just call it because it's probably still your main phase. If it's Minerva, you have a Persona ride, and if it's one of your orders, then you just have it now. Like, overall, it's just really hard for this to miss unless you happen to get all three, like, triggers or something. So, it's a very good card, like a strong staple for Keter. It's just a damn shame it's so friggin' expensive. Next, we have Knight of Piercing Cadwalla. So, end of battle, it attacked the Vanguard if you have 4 or more units. Okay, so that means you can have, like, your Vanguard and then 3 rear guards, and that's enough. So you can Soul Blast 1, retire it. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 2 or greater unit card from among them, reveal it, put it to your hand, shuffle your deck. If you didn't reveal, draw a card. So, I've kind of seen lists vary between just like straight up 4 copies of this guy or like a 2-2 split. I like Cadwalla in the deck. So, because it Soul Blasts in the battle phase, it's another way to get to Chamomile if you don't have Angelica, and then you can search your top 3, so if you grab like a Minerva or a Drilling Angel, like those are both really nice to have, or a Chamomile, I guess, like you can grab another copy of its, or not Chamomile, a copy of Angelica. Like, it can just grab you a whole bunch of things. It helps you cycle out a Chamomile because it's in the battle phase. It's just a nice card to have. I really liked it when I was playtesting the deck. So I like the 2-2 split. Next we have Drilling Angel. So this card did go up for a little while. I think when Minerva first released, and you know, we have like this and Graham Grace in the same set that both kind of make use of this card. It like got bought out. It was at like $8-9. Now it's gone back to around 2 or 3, which is pretty nice. It's always better when cards are more affordable. So when this card is placed on Rearguard Circle, you can put a unit card from drop into soul, look at the top 3 cards, choose up to 1 card with the same card name as what you put in your soul, and then call it to rear and shuffle. So this is a nice way to cycle like Chamomiles or Melissas that you've gotten into your drop zone for whatever reason, like discarded for Ride Line, you called over it, it got retired, etc. So Drilling Angel is just really nice to kind of get the deck live. And then you have Apple Witch Cider. So at the end of the battle, this unit boosted. If you have a Vanguard with Minerva, you can return it to your hand. And then when it's put on the guard circle, if your soul has a grade 3 card with Regalia in it, then it gets shield +5, so it's got decent defensive value, but also, because Minerva has to discard a Genesis card, it's nice that you can call this out, boost with it, and then put it back in your hand so you have guaranteed discard fodder, and, you know, if you don't discard it, again, like, good defensive value. And then, for the rest of it, we have 3 PG, 1 Sanctitude, of course. Especially with Chronojet running around now, like, Sanctitude is just always going to be useful, and even without things like Jet or other grade 4 decks, you still kind of have to deal with, like, guard restricts and the like, so Sanctitude is just always helpful to have. We're gonna go 3 draw, 8 crit, 4 heal, OT. So, when I was playing the deck, I thought the hand sizes were pretty, like, because, like, Cadwalla and Carbra, like, plus you, but everything else is just kind of, like, hard calling from hand, and then you're just kind of shuffling things from your soul, so your hand side is kind of mid. So, like, the draw triggers are nice over fronts, and because Minerva gives, like, the +5k to front row, usually things can hit, like, alright numbers. You're not, like, super starved for power. So, yeah, I like the draw triggers. Considering playing 4 just because I found hand sizes mediocre, but that's just kind of up to personal taste, right? Then, of course, crits because restanding Vanguard, more criticals the better. OT, of course, because we're never getting this banned. And finally, we have 1 copy of the Cup, Gratia's Gradale. So this just activates Persona Ride, so because Minerva has to discard a Genesis, one of the problems I found is just not having enough Genesis cards because all of your, like, triggers, Drilling Angels, etc. just kind of brick your hand. And so, you know, the Grail is nice, because if you just have an extra copy of Minerva and the Grail, you can be like, alright, I need the Minerva to discard just to, like, be safe about it. And then I can still have the Grail activate Persona Ride. So it's nice to have. This is one of those decks where you have the space, it serves an actual value. It's good. It's just, $17 card. And then now we have the mid-priced version. I've kind of tweaked it a few times. So we're up to 3 Codwalas now, so we're just getting rid of the Carbras because there's no way anyone is paying $40 unless they're just rich. So everything else is mostly the same. We're just replacing the Carbras with Painkiller Angel. So this card has gone down quite a lot, actually. So let's just go to TCG Player real quick. So if we look up Painkiller Angel, this card's only like $3-4 now, so ignore the fact that I have things in my card. I was just pricing out Minerva stuff earlier. So yeah, this card's $3-4 now, which is way better than the $15 that it was previously. Much more affordable now. So still kind of serves a purpose of soul blasting in the battle phase. So it retires itself, you can replace it with a Melissa, or if you just don't care about the thing in front of it, let's say you called a Painkiller or a Drilling Angel, and you're alright, this card's done its job, don't need it there anymore, then you can call out a Chamomile over it, and then it still draws you a card, so it kind of lets you dig deeper into the deck. I think it's actually a decent budget option now that it's affordable again. So yeah, that's pretty nice. So yeah, we're playing 4 PGs now. Sanctitude is unfortunately a $30 card. So, when I was pricing out the full fat, everything optimized, or at least that I think is optimal just based on what has been topping, this is $300. Because, these two are just $80, and then Sanctitude is $30, the Grail is $20. Of course, Minerva herself is $10 each. This is also $10, $11. So yeah, when I priced everything out, and these are $5, $6 as well. This one trigger, for some reason, is also just really expensive. I guess people really like playing cute girls in their deck. I don't blame them. I have 4 copies of this in all my Keter decks too. But yeah, when I priced out this exact list, it was $300, and that's ridiculous. So once we pare down a lot of it, this halved the price of the deck. This is closer to $150, which is still pretty expensive, but for a tier 2 deck that's decently competitive, it's not horrible. I think people who are willing to invest a bit of money into Vanguard, this will be a nice middle of the road option where it'll get you pretty good competitive performance for, moderately high price, but not ridiculously so, right? I think $10-ish for strong staple Vanguard cards is fair enough for my taste. I understand not everyone can afford that kind of thing, so I'm gonna classify this in the mid to high range. And then of course we have the as cheap as we can get it copium version of the deck. I didn't put Painkiller in this one because I made this version of the list before I realized Painkiller was so cheap, but I think you could just replace this. Definitely replace the order. But yeah, we're just playing this guy, so on play, if your Vanguard only has 1 clan, you can Soul Blast, discard a card, choose a card in your drop zone with the same clan as your Vanguard, and add it to your hand. So because Drilling, and of course all these replacement cards, even if you had Painkiller Angel in here, are all Keter Sanctuary and not Genesis, you can run into situations where you may not have discard fodder for Minerva. So this is a nice way to just sort of fix your hand. And then I just kind of put this one in here because I'm well, you have a bunch of ways to get a grade 3 into Soul, so it'll always just be a 15k booster. That's okay. Honestly, probably just replace it with Painkiller Angel, so I'd probably be 2 of this, and then 3 Painkillers, replacing 1 copy of the order. So if we skimp down as much as possible, this one gets a little bit closer to around 120-ish, whereas this one was like 150, 160. So again, Minerva is just not going to be cheap at all, just because of like Minerva herself being expensive and just like overall price of Vanguard cards just kind of stacking up. So, like 4 of these is going to be like $10 about. This is like $4. Oh yeah, and then we've just like completely replaced the triggers now. I think the mid-price deck, we also just replaced the effect crit with like vanillas because the effect crits are like $5, so skimping on them saves you like $20. And so this is just kind of the same thing here. We're like, all right, we're just saving ourselves like $15 by cutting the effect draws. It's gonna feel really bad because you lose a lot of defensive value, but without them, this deck comes out to around like 110, 120, gets to about 130 if you include them. So yeah, I think no matter what you do, this deck is always gonna come out to around to above $100, So if you go with the ultra conservative route, try to get it as cheap as you can, it'll still run you a decent amount, unfortunately. But I think Minerva is like decent bang for your buck. Like if you play Vanguard a lot, you want to perform well, like this is pretty good. It's a restanding Vanguard that can get additional rearguard attacks as well. The power numbers aren't bad. Hand size is but I think you can kill your opponent a lot of the time, so yeah, it's like a good mid-range bang for your buck. So, if you like this idea, please let me know. Like, I'm interested in doing more of these, like, tiered deck lists. Another one I'm looking at is Maelstrom, which I played during Springfest, because, like, aside from the Inlet Pulse Dragons that are, like, $30, like, everything else in the deck is relatively cheap. I had Diantha in my list, and she's, like, a $14 card for no reason, but, aside from those, and I think Diantha's pretty cuttable in that list, but I digress. Like, I'm interested in doing more of these tiered deck lists. I think other people would like to do tiered deck lists as well, because, let's be honest, Standard is just overpriced, so yeah. If you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment, like, what other tech options do you think would work in this deck? Like, are there other ways you can kind of skimp down on things to try and make it just that little bit cheaper? Leave a comment up. Thank you to our $10 patrons, Darren, Cole, Josh, Jeremy, GR, and Ali. If you would like to support the show, $1 gives you access to our Discord, $5 gets you a whole-ass bonus show, and $10 will get you a shout-out like I did just now. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.